Hello, this is Tracy Schulsinger. I'm a shamanic practitioner and I'm here to talk to you about Spirit Guides 101. This is the basics. This is the who, the what, the where, the when, the how. So if you are wondering if you have spirit guides and where do they come from and how does it all work and how can they serve you and help you and are they for everyone? Do I have one? Do I have many? This video is all about that. So who are spirit guides? I journeyed and I asked my spirit guides, who are you? And they told me that spirit guides, them and all spirit guides in general, have lived already. They have experienced life just like we are experiencing life now. I've been taught that we have many lives, we have different reincarnations, and just like the spirit guides as well. And the spirit guides have completed many lives. And they came to the point when they were complete. And they were given the option of merging back with Source. That's where we come from, and that's where we go back to. That's also what I've been taught by my spirit guides. And when they were given that option to merge with Source or to stay and help those of us that are still in human form, they chose to stay. They chose to stay and to be supportive. So they're here voluntarily, and those are our spirit guides. There's also other spirits who are here that we would refer to as entities, and their story is a little different. Sometimes when people die, it can be surprising, it can be shocking. They cannot want to have actually died. And those spirits don't always cross over. And so if you've heard of haunted houses, or after people have died, sometimes close people to them, their relatives, children perhaps, I've worked with children that have experienced this, they feel like their parent is now within them. All of a sudden they're doing things that their parent used to do. They may have picked up a habit, or one woman had just gained a lot of weight all of a sudden and had become really afraid of flying all of a sudden after her mother died. And her and her mother were really close, and her mother did die of a illness. So it wasn't a sudden death, but her mother really didn't want to die. And so I worked with this woman and we did some shamanic healing. We did psychopumping. Psychopumping is where you help to release a spirit that's inside a person inhabiting their body, and you help that spirit to cross over. Another way of terming that or naming that is compassionate depossession. We've often been afraid of those kinds of situations because of movies like The Exorcist, but typically when I encounter spirits that are in another person, an entity, they're not really there wanting to cause harm, but they actually do suck our energy away. So it's not a good thing. We don't want that. We only want to be feeding ourselves. But for the most part, that's a separate thing. Those are entities, but your spirit guides, they're here for your highest good. So what are they? So they can be called helping spirits, they can be called power animals, guardian angels. Spirit guides is like a big umbrella term that I like to use because it encompasses all of them. They may look like an animal, like an eagle is a very classic one. It might look like a flower or a tree. It could be a light, like a ball of light. It could come as the wind. It could look like a mythical character. Well, dragons, maybe someone would say they're not mythical characters or mythical animals, but they might look like that. It could look like an alien. So spirit guides come in different forms, but truly they're beyond their form. They come in a form because we are in form and we're comfortable in form. We're used to form. We can navigate form. But they're much more than their form. They're much greater and bigger than their form. You can learn to connect with them through journeying, and when you journey, you can ask them to drop their form and for them to show you their power, to show you how big they truly are. And that's the same thing for ourselves. We're also spirits in a form. And this body may feel like that's enclosing you, but you are also so much bigger than your body. And I did this wonderful mediumship experience with one of my guides where my guide came inside of me and I was speaking, and my guide was actually, my mouth was moving and my voice was heard, but my guide was the one speaking, and my guide kept telling everybody that was there, you are so much bigger than you realize. And that's all my guide said. That message was so important to my guide to get out, that no matter what question that people there were asking my guide, that's all she would say. You are so much bigger than you realize. So what else? Where are they? Are they always here? Are they listening? Or are they only here if I call them in, like if I'm journeying, for example? Well, I have experienced personally that they are always aware and listening and here. So I'll tell you how I know that for myself, at least. And actually, there's been plenty of other examples I can give you too, but this one is a really, really big, important one that has affected me in my life. So about 2 years ago, my husband and I were talking about having a baby, and I had been thinking a lot about it. I was ready, and I didn't want the pregnancy to interfere with some things I had planned. I didn't want to have a baby and be on maternity leave when these certain things were about to happen in my life that I really, really was excited about. And so I told him, let's try to get pregnant at this time, so then I have the baby at this time, and then I'll have my maternity leave at these months, and then I can do this thing. And he was like, that sounds really controlling. I don't want to try to plan a baby like that. I want it to be just the right time because we feel ready, not because of your schedule. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I get that. I totally get that. So I just decided, okay, I'm just gonna let it go. I'm not gonna plan it around anything that's happening in life. And I'm just gonna trust that we're gonna know when the time is right. Something's just gonna let us know. And so I did. I truly let it go, and I was just in this place of we'll see and trust. And then a few months later, I was away at a retreat. And during that weekend, there was a lot of information coming in, and I was really feeling it super intensely, and I was really, really ungrounded. I felt really spacey. I actually felt kind of sick. And I knew it was because of how I was responding to the energy. And so I kept going outside and grounding myself. I was asking my guides, I was calling them in, I was in nature, and I was asking them, please ground me and please help me know, how can I deal with all this energy that I'm receiving? Like, why am I feeling so bad from it? Because I knew it was good energy, it was good information. I was having a wonderful experience with a really awesome channeler, but I just wasn't processing well within myself. And so they told me what I needed to do to stay grounded, but they kept grounding me. And then 3 times during that weekend, they said, it's time to get pregnant. And I wasn't asking, and I really wasn't even thinking about it, but they knew that that's what we had wanted. And they were telling me now is the time. And so after the 3rd time, I realized, oh, I haven't said okay, I haven't acknowledged that I hear this. And so I said, okay, I got it. And then they didn't tell me again. So I also heard from a friend, she just randomly texted me and said she had a dream I was pregnant. And then I went home and I told my husband, and he said that he was thinking about it. He was thinking about, when are we gonna start? And I said, well, I feel like the time is now. And so we agreed we would start trying, and I got pregnant immediately. And I actually felt, a few days later, I felt the conception. I felt this really wonderful energy come from my womb up. It rose up, and it felt like happy bubbles. And I just knew, I was certain I was pregnant, and I was. And so my guides were listening. I wasn't journeying, and I wasn't asking them when. They just came in and they told me, because they knew that that was our intention at some point when the time was right. So I was in a place of trust and receiving, and they let me know. I have another story as far as, where are they? And and how long have they been with us? So we all do have guides. They're with us from the time we're born, and sometimes we'll have guides that just come in like during a time of our life. I got a guide when I was in graduate school. It was this little hummingbird, and she was just there to like help me deal with everything that was going on. And she's not around any longer. I don't need her any longer. But I have a lot of other guides that I still use all the time. I have guides that I use with shamanic healing, and in different components of shamanic healing. I have a soul retrieval guide, I have 2 extraction guides, I have 2 psychopomp guides, I have another guide with Reiki, and then I have my own like main guides. Another question is, beyond what they look like, but do they ever change form? And one of my guides, my very first guide, showed up first as an animal. And then I actually noticed this guide. I realized this guide also was connected to my father, who was really my very, very first guide that I connected with after he passed over. I was a child and I started praying after he passed, and I was praying to him, and I really felt like when I prayed for him to help, that it did help. And I wasn't told or shown to do that. My family wasn't spiritual or religious. It just started happening for me when I was 6 years old. And actually, he's my first guide. And fast forward to when I was in my mid-20s and I started to journey, my first guide was in animal form. And then when I was learning about psychopomp work, my dad came into a journey and told me that he was that guide. I just didn't see him. He showed up in a different form. And now that same guide also is in the form of light. So 3 different forms, all the same essence. It's pretty cool, isn't it? So my mom, she came to an Intro to Shamanic Journeying workshop I taught years ago. And she journeyed for the first time, and she met a power animal. And she realized that this power animal had actually come to her in a dream right after my father had passed, which was over 30 years before this experience. It was the same guide, but when she saw it in a dream, it was in the form of an animal. And the concept of spirit guide hadn't occurred to her. I don't know if she'd ever really known about that before I told her about that. But this animal was walking next to her. They were walking down a path, and the animal was standing up, walking next to her, and she felt supported. And she didn't remember that dream until she met that same animal, which she realized at the time was her spirit guide. And she realized, wow, this guide has been here all along. And it was really touching to her. There's another story I can tell you about a man who came to one of my workshops, and after he journeyed for the first time, he told me that he first met that guide when he was coming out of anesthesia. He had had a surgery, he was coming out of anesthesia. In that time when he was kind of here and there, he saw this guide, but he didn't think of it as a guide. It's similar like a dream state. He didn't think of it as a guide, but when he was at this journeying gathering where he learned a shamanic journey, he saw the same one, and the one that he saw introduced himself as his guide. So they really are with us, and it's just a matter of us wanting to get to know them and learning how to get to know them, where we can have more of a tangible relationship. You're already in relationship, you're already having one, but you just don't know about it consciously. But when you learn how to journey, you can make it conscious. So the when can I connect with my guide? Well, you want to create sacred space. You want to be available. You want to create the opportunity and show up and say, hey, I am ready for this. So you can certainly do that when you learn how to journey, but that's not the only way you can do it. You can also ask your spirit guides to come into you to your dream time. Before you go to sleep, you can ask your spirit guides to come and to show themselves to you, to introduce themselves to you in a dream. Also, if you're meditating, when you meditate, you're really there to connect with your breath and to be really, really focused in that meditative state. But you can also set the intention during meditation that a guide may pop in. You can also pray. You can just pray and say, "Dear spirit guides, thank you for being here for me. Thank you for helping me with such and such that you would like help with." Let's say you're going through an illness. You can say, "Dear spirit guides, thank you so much for helping me understand what's inside myself that may be needing to be released or clear, that could be contributing to this illness or making this illness more challenging." Or, "Dear spirit guides, thank you for helping me find the tools that I need to overcome such and such emotional state or a fear." Or, you can pray to them in any way that feels really true to you. You want to do it from your heart. And when you're praying to your guides, it's awesome to thank them and also to pray for what you want like it's already happening. If you're thinking of it, it already is happening on some level because you're already aware of it. It's already in your energy field. Even if you haven't seen it manifest in physical way, that's like the last thing that happens. Things start to happen more on the ethereal level, the emotional level, the spiritual level before they come into form. We always have to have an idea that starts inside before it's going to be seen on the outside, before we create it in physical form. So, what else? Oh, this is a really important point. So, I have a meditation teacher who's a dear friend who when he was in college, he was studying Tibetan Buddhism, and he was reading about stories of roshis who were meditating and having these really incredible experiences during their meditation where spirit guides were coming in. So there is a connection between Tibetan Buddhism and shamanism. So he read these stories and he was inspired to meet his own guide. So he went up and he climbed up and hiked in a mountain, on a mountainside, and sat there and just called in a guide. And a guide came to him, but it wasn't a guide that actually was there for his highest good. This guide ended up scaring him. He felt more of a dark presence. He felt that the guide was being like pushy toward him. There was a point he actually felt like the guide was trying to push him over. And after this happened a number of times, at one point he just shouted for the guide to go away. He banished the guide with his intention. So he brought the guide in with his intention, and then he banished the guide also with his intention. But he didn't really know he could do that until he did it. And he did it out of a moment of like anger and rage and fear. And so the point here is that if you ever call in a guide, you want to call in a loving guide, a kind guide, a benevolent guide, a helpful guide, a healing guide. You want to qualify what kind of guide you are calling in. You don't want to just call out there, because there are spiritual presences out there, like entities, that you don't want to be in your energy field. Just like if you have a party, you want to invite your friends. You don't want to invite somebody to your party that you're struggling with. It won't be, it may not, I mean, you may want to, I wouldn't want to. It just probably wouldn't be as enjoyable. So be really careful about that. That's a really, really important point. That's one of the biggest points as far as like your own safety and protection, is that you can set boundaries and that you can say who is allowed in your space and who is not allowed in your space. Okay, the how. How do you connect with your guides, and how is this possible? So the best way, in my opinion, is through journeying. They certainly do come in, like in the examples I provided you with. But when you journey, the depth of the communication and the connection, in my experience, is the greatest overall. So I will do a video about journeying. This one is specifically about spirit guides. But I will tell you that if you want to learn how to journey, my teacher, Sandra Ingerman, has a website that's shamanicteachers.com. And it says where there are shamanic teachers all over the world. She has trained a lot of us, and that's her intention. She wants to plant seeds of shamanic practitioners and shamanic teachers all over the world. There's also a book she wrote called Shamanic Journeying by Sandra Ingerman. It's an introductory guide. And that book is good. It has really good content. It explains some of the things I'm talking about as far as journeying, like who, what, where, when, how. And there's good stories that she shares that some of her students have experienced the power and the healing and the protection and the companionship of their guides. But I do favor the workshops. I like the workshops better than just learning out of a book, because you have somebody there you can ask questions to. You have a supportive community. Having community is really, really important. A lot of people who are doing this work feel like they're kind of alone because it's not as common as going to a baseball game or going to a football game or, some of those things. So going to workshops, you'll meet more people that are in your tribe, more of your spirit family, as I like to also call it. And then how is this possible? Well, you know what? There's a lot of things that are possible that we aren't aware of. Imagine if you lived in an indigenous culture. Imagine if you were born in Peru or in Tibet, in the high mountains of Tibet, or in Siberia. This may be just an everyday normal part of life. But where we are in modern day, I'm in North America, I'm not sure where you are exactly, but where we are in more of like modern Western culture, we're not taught this part of the world. We're not taught that this part of existence is just as real as it is to go grocery shopping. But it is. It's very, very possible. And there's some things in life that you just really have to experience for yourself to fully, fully get it. And this is one of those things. Even if you may find me sincere and convincing, and some of the stories I'm sharing with you sound really, really great, the mind is still probably going to come in with doubt and skepticism, because that's the mind's job. The mind is there to question things and keep us safe, and that's okay. If you experience it and then you're better off for it, then your mind will be more convinced. So I would recommend finding yourself a workshop if you want to connect more with your guides and if you want to learn more about journeying. So just a little tidbit on shamanic journeying. So I asked my guides, what is it? What is shamanic journeying? Like, I've experienced it, it's amazing, but how do I talk about it? It was so hard in the first few years to find the words, the languaging, because since this isn't such a normal part of our culture, we don't have a lot of the words and languaging to describe this. So my guides showed me my head going, just getting really, really, really big. And they said that shamanic journeying is an expansion of consciousness. It's when your state of consciousness expands. So we're aware of certain things, the smaller our consciousness is, the less we're aware of. So shamanic journeying really makes it a lot bigger, and that means we get to experience more out of life. And when we are in this expanded state of consciousness, we're aware of a lot more of things in life about ourselves and about other people, and yet we can still be grounded. We can still be working in the world. We can still be regular people. There's a misconception out there that I've heard from a lot of people that when you are really into spirituality and spiritual practices, that you're a hermit, or that you're hard to connect to, or that you can't deal with the regular parts of life like money, and you're not grounded. Well, I am here to tell you that is not true. We are here meant to be in the body, in this life. And so we're meant to still interact with all the normal everyday parts of life. So a common question that people ask is, how many spirit guides do I have? Do I have one? Do I have many? Well, everybody definitely has at least one. And as you are more engaging with this part of life, you can certainly ask for more and attract more to help you with different things that you're doing. Once you start to journey, for example, let's say you're a writer, you can ask to receive a writing guide. Or if you're a singer, you can ask to receive a guide who can help you to sing. Since I'm involved with healing work, I have many, many guides that help me with healing work. There was a time in my life when I was going through something really difficult with my daughter. When she was born, she had some health challenges. And my guides told me that I needed to do fear clearing for myself and for my husband, that some of the fears that we had contributed to my daughter. We basically were afraid of, we both have had loss in our life of immediate family members, and we were afraid of our daughter not being well or something happening to her, and she was born with some serious health issues. And so it's not like my guides were blaming us. It wasn't in a way that I felt personally responsible. It was just part of the whole deal. She also, my daughter, also has stuff she's been dealing with from her own past lives, and she's doing very, very well right now. But during the process, my spirit guides gave me a new guide that helped me with fear clearing. Another question is, do I have to be in a certain religion to journey or to have a shamanic practice? Is it against my religion? And shamanism isn't religion. Isn't a religion. It's actually a way of life. So it's not going to say, you know, any religion is right or wrong. It's really just about connecting to source. And many different religions out there have their own version of source. And we're not here to say that any version is the version that's true or not true. It's really about connecting with your truth, with your heart, what speaks true to you. And when you have a relationship with your guides and with shamanic journeying, what is true and what is not true becomes more and more obvious. You can feel it more and more. You become more sensitive. So that's what I wanted to share with you about spirit guides. And if you would like to learn to journey, there is a retreat coming up where I'll be teaching. It's for women. It's called Ignite Your Soul. It's going to be May 9th to May 12th in Sedona at Angel Valley. And I've been journeying to the spirits of the land there. They're amazing. They are here to activate us. They're here to spark us. All they want is for us to come with loving hearts. And they said that the work that we do there in the desert, because it's hard to grow in the desert, they said any work you do in the desert is really, really strong and it really, really lasts. Also, if you're a local person or wanting to travel, on June 9th in Boulder, Colorado, I'm teaching an Introduction to Shamanic Journeying workshop. And there's also Sandra Ingerman's website where there's lots of teachers listed all over the world, shamanicteachers.com. If you like this, let me know. If you want to hear more, subscribe. And if there's a topic you want me to speak to, let me know in the comments. I would love to share more about what you want to hear. Thank you so much and be well. Lastly, my website is shamanism.thehealingcollective.us. Take care. Be well.